Finally, we've made it to the end. This is the Yzmir edition of the Whispers from the Maze set review. About 9 hours of content in set review discussions. Let's finish strong, shall we? Hey yo, what up? Welcome back to our final faction review for Whispers from the Maze. This is the Yzmir faction. Thankfully, this is the last one. We will have a recap video coming out after this to go over our biggest winners and biggest losers. So expect that soon. If you haven't watched any of our previous videos, my friend Ryan is going to be joining me for this. If you want to see his introduction, it is in the first one, the Axiom edition. I would recommend watching this sort of like a podcast. Just put it on in the background while you're doing something else. This is going to be a long video, so strap in and let's get to it. Okay, so first up, we've got the Scribbling Starfish. This is 1 from hand, 2 from reserve, 1, 1, 1. No rules text. It does have a passive support ability, which is the standard one for Yzmir. We've seen it in the previous ones at this point, but it is when you play a spell, I gain a boost up to a maximum of 2. I like this card. This card is sweet. It's relatively cheap, a 1-mana 1/1. Happy with that. A 2-mana ceiling of 3/3/3. Also happy with that. How do you feel about the Scribbling Starfish?
Yeah, I think it's a little worse than other 1-drops in Limited in particular. We've talked about this before. Yzmir passive support ability makes sense for the faction, is also harder to trigger in Limited. You can't necessarily guarantee that you'll have the volume of spells, particularly of spells that are good to play, that are relevant to play, that will reliably make this a 2-mana 3/3/3. So that doesn't mean it's bad by any stretch of the imagination. Like, on its face, 1-mana 1/1, like you mentioned, is perfectly fine. You'll play that. I think most games of Limited, you'll pay 2 and probably at best get a 2/2/2, which is, again, fine. Some amount of the time, it'll either be a 1/1 or you'll let it wash out of reserve because you couldn't get triggers on it and you had better things to do with 2 mana. So because of that, I think I probably place it at about a 4. It's a little bit below the ones I want to play.
Yeah, I think it's definitely better and constructed because you're going to play this in a deck that cares about spells, and you might not play the common version. You know, we'll get to the rare soon, but common version is fine. It's serviceable. I think I'll give it a 5 just because it would be a nice slot filler at the 1-mana cost in a Spellslinger deck. Okay. But for the rare, we've got all the same cost, all the same stats. It does now have rules text in that when you play me from reserve, you may spend one of my boosts to draw a card. We are now talking.
Yep, 100%.
It has that 3-word phrase that everyone loves in a card game, draw a card. So this card's great. I have been keeping up a little bit with some of the tournaments that have been going on the last couple of weeks, and I've been shocked to not see this card in the decks. I expect this to be almost a staple in a Faunus, just because you're playing a bunch of spells, you're putting boosts on this guy, you're going to have plenty to remove to draw a card, and they already play Magical Training. This is just Magical Training on a body. It's like, I don't know why they're not playing this card. I think this card's great. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is substantially better. I think one of the difference makers with this version of the card is that if I'm playing Limited and I see this, it does draw me into playing more of the core Yzmir strategy, i.e., I'm going to prioritize higher spells that are relevant that I do want to play. I'll probably pair Yzmir with like Ordis or maybe Bravos because they tend to have spells that are actually like affecting the board and doing stuff, and try to, maximize the value on this and also pick up other Yzmir things with the Yzmir passive support ability, at least the good ones. Because drawing a card, getting a 2-mana 2/2 that draws you a card is enormous. Like it's going to meaningfully contribute towards your chances of winning the game overall. So
Absolutely.
I think I would probably rate it a 7.
Yeah, and in Limited, I mean, there's ways to augment it, so it could be even bigger.
Totally. Yep.
Like put more boosts on it in reserve and get it even larger. So yeah, I think this card's great. I hope to see it in Constructed, and because I'm hopeful, I want to also give this a 7, I think. This card is sweet. Big fan. I don't really know what my ceiling is for 1-drops in terms of rating, but I think a 7 or an 8 is fine for this. I'll just stick with a 7. As for the Lyra version, it is mostly the same, but it loses 1 in water. So it is notably trying to synergize with the base statistic 0 that Lyra wants to do. It also now has the Lyra passive support ability, which is when you play another character with base statistic of 0, gain a boost up to a max of 2. This is cool. I mean, this slots very well into those lists that want to play synergistic pieces with base statistic of 0. It has the same rules text of spend a boost to draw a card from reserve. Yeah, again, I think this is just very good, and I wouldn't be surprised to see this played in Lyra and constructed as well.
Yeah,
I imagine your rating doesn't change.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because I think this is a passive support ability that is easier to trigger in limited for the most part. There's a lot of 0 stat stuff, and not only in Lyra, but distributed in several of the factions. And so, like, you can imagine a 3-faction deck that the majority of characters can trigger this. That's something I've thought about since our Lyra set review. On its face, it's worse because it has a 0 stat, but I think there's an offset here of from hand it is a little bit worse, and from reserve it is a little bit better, just because you're more likely to be able to get this at maximum value. So I think it still lands at 7, but it doesn't draw it doesn't draw you towards the Yzmir spell stuff. It instead draws you towards 0 stat stuff. Both of these rares have in limited attraction towards a core mechanic that is fairly strong because you want the payoff from this card.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because if you open the rare and the faction shifted, you probably wouldn't play them in the same deck.
Yeah, so. Bizarrely, but yes.
Yeah, that is strange. And for constructed, I mean, I don't know if the 0 statistic decks are gonna ever really be that good. I don't think Auroch, is very good right now. So that would be the deck that you want to play this in. That passive support ability plays well with, the 0 base statistic, but I don't know. It might drop down 1 point for me just because it has a 0 in water. I think I'll give it a 6.
Okay, fair enough.
That's the Scribbling Starfish.
Next up,
moving on,
we have Pasiphae, I'm guessing. 2 from hand, 2 from reserve for a 0/0/0 character noble. No thanks. I don't want that. Turns out it does have rules text. From anywhere, I gain fleeting. Wow, even worse. From anywhere, I gain 1 boost per character target opponent controls. I assume the target opponent phrasing is there to nod towards multiplayer formats, which I don't know if you've ever played, but I certainly.
No, I haven't played. They do exist, though. There
Yeah.
is a 2v2 format. They have official rules out for that.
This feels like a Bravos card. So, okay, your opponent, it doesn't care about, which expedition the opposing characters are in. The value of this card scales relative to how many characters your opponents tend to play, if they go wide, and how early they tend to play them. I think this is really bad on turn 1, and probably for the first several turns of the game. It gets better over time, especially as you gain in your abilities to do after you shenanigans in Yzmir and play this reactively after your opponent has kind of run out of gas. It's a hard one to evaluate. What do you think?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. My initial intuition tells me that this card is bad, but then thinking about it more, like you said, going with the after use, and this kind of scales later into the game because you're going to be playing more characters and more expeditions. It's a cheap, let's think, if you're playing against what is currently the best deck in the format, Yzmir, they're always going to have 3 or 4 characters in their expeditions at any given time. So you're paying 2 mana for a 3/3/3 or 4/4/4 with fleeting. Is that good? Yes, probably. That's a Bravos Tracer in the Bravos faction, so I don't know. This card is really weird.
I think it's probably below average in most cases.
If you're not playing against Yzmir, this card is not good, I don't think.
Yeah.
But we can't bully her. Look at the flavor text.
Yeah, that's true. Don't take this as bullying. I'm giving you a 4. And that's just because is the after you here, is that Akesha?
Yeah.
Is Akesha in the limited format? Yes, right?
Yes, because Lindaway is not.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. There's potential for this to be playable with Akesha as your hero. I think outside of that context, I would struggle to want to play this card. The downside is just terrible. Like 2 mana unplayable because it does nothing. Or 2
Yeah,
mana
and
1/1 is very bad. So
with fleeting at that.
and that's also what makes like the 2 mana 2/2/2 outcome still kind of bad, because I don't want my 2 mana 2/2/2 to be fleeting, like with no other value.
Yeah, in a world where like Goal Ring is popping off everywhere and Sigismar
Sure.
is making a bunch of tokens, I could see this being played and constructed. I think this could be a sideboard card. You know, we've talked about that in some of the previous videos. But right now, I don't think this card is great. I think I'm going to give it a 2.
Brutal. Yeah, again, it's worth noting for the limited context, I would treat this card not like a 2-drop in terms of your mana curve math, because you're always going to want to play it later, like universally.
Mm-hmm.
Unless your opponent slams a conscription early in a way that hurts you very badly. But we do have a pretty meaningful upgrade in the rare. Same cost, same stats, same ability of gaining a boost per character target opponent controls. However, no more fleeting. So you actually get to reuse this bad boy or bad girl. Don't love that. It's better. It's better to not have fleeting. Granted, your opponent can then play around it kind of, but they got to play characters anyway. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's better, right?
it's better. Yeah, I agree. It's probably a couple of points better in my opinion. Just the downside of having a 2 mana, maybe like 2/2/2 or something with fleeting on the common is so bad that losing fleeting, I think, probably bumps this up to like a 4 for me. I can see a world where eventually you'll be giving your opponent characters. Like, it's like there's already the Metamorphosis removal spell in Yzmir, which we'll get to later, where you discard a character your opponent controls and replace it with a Mana Moth. So maybe there's something there where you like do something but also give them a 1/1/1 or something, and then that would synergize well with this. I'm hopeful for the future of this card, if that makes sense.
Okay,
They
so
selected this as one of the...
Go ahead.
Yeah, they selected this as one of the alternative art cards. So maybe they have something cooking with this. I don't know. Maybe I'm theory crafting too much, but I'm going to give this card a 4.
Some of what you're saying is hypothesizing on future card releases that don't exist yet.
Right.
Okay.
But we've been hinted in that direction with Metamorphosis, I think.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, this is better. It's actually quite a bit better. I can see the turn 2s where you end up playing this and you don't necessarily feel bad about it, depending on what your opponent did turn 1 and if they are on the play in turn 2. I think you're more commonly going to start playing this around turn 3, with it fairly consistently being a 2 mana 2/2 or better, and getting a second use out of it is quite a bit better. So I would bump it up to a 6. I think it's above replacement on 2-drops broadly. It is vanilla and has no other like synergies or interactions, but like the potential to get 2 mana 4/4 off of this is there, and like that's the kind of play you want to be making, particularly towards the late game. We faction shift into Muna, and it is an exact carbon copy of the rare version, so no fleeting and getting boost for your characters start putting controls. I don't think the faction context... I mean, it makes a little bit of a difference because of Akesha and After You and Yzmir broadly in having After You effects, but like in limited, I don't... You're not doing that too terribly much, and you should still be able to sequence your turns turn 4 plus to have this be one of the last cards you play and close the door on an Yzmir. What do you think?
Yeah, I was going to say it synergizes well with Tasia because it will get a boost, but you never want to play this first.
Nope,
so
never.
It actually doesn't. Yeah. I do like this card because there have been many games where we've made it to turn 6 or turn 7, and we're each going back and forth with our 2 and 3 mana plays, and then my opponent finally taps all of their mana and they play their Haymaker. They're like, you've got nothing left for 2 mana. This is kind of cool as like actually I have a 2 mana 5/5 or whatever.
Right.
And you go over the top. That's kind of exciting, and potential is there, but I don't think it matters that much in constructed, to be honest. Like Muna, you can anchor this or something. I mean, that's fine.
It doesn't benefit from anchoring beyond just being stats that are anchored. Yeah.
Yeah.
I still rate this one 6. I'm consistent with the Yzmir rare. I don't think any of the faction stuff changes the rating. What do you think?
Yeah, it doesn't have like a relevant subtype being an animal or anything like that. So I think I'm just going to give it a 4 again. Doesn't really change much for me. All right, that's Pasiphae. Let's move on to Yzmir Engraver. So this is 2 from hand, 3 from reserve. Character, artist, mage. It's an artist, okay? Didn't know that. 2/2/0 stat line, so 0 in water. It says, when you play me from reserve, you may spend one of my boosts to send to reserve target character with hand cost 2 or less. So kind of a nerfed off you go. Off you go, is 3 or less. This one is 2 or less. You have to spend a boost for it. And then it has the passive Yzmir support ability of when you play a spell, give it a boost up to a max of 2. I opened this guy in my pre-release kits, and I think I picked him in draft as well at the last draft we played. And I thought I would like him more. I really did. I almost never had boosts on this character to activate his effect. So, like you were saying earlier, like the Yzmir passive support ability is just so hard to trigger in limited. I don't know. I want this card to be good. I like the art too, but for me, he was kind of a miss. I don't know if you got a chance to see this in action or use it yourself.
Neither. I did not see this played. I did not play with it. I don't think it's very good. Like, it being a 2/2/0, the faction shift, which we will talk about, is going to make sense. But as is, I don't love that math for a 2-drop. I really don't love it. For a 3-drop where I'm probably have gotten 1 boost and I'm spending it. Like,
Yeah.
3 mana for a 2/2/0, sure. The ideal is that your net impact to the board is that you're subtracting like 2/2 or better stats from your opponent's side of the board. I think that's tricky to make work. Hand cost 2 or less is a very narrow set of costs. And they're not always the things that you most desperately want to get rid of. They're not the most board impacting plays that your opponent's made. I don't think this card is very good. I don't think I'm going to play it very often or see it played very often. What would you give it?
I think I'm going to give it a 3.
That's where I was at too. You will play this some amount of the time just because you need a dude, and it's better than a mana convergence, but not by.
Yeah, the rare is actually a reasonable upgrade. It says everything is the same except the play from reserve ability changes just a little bit. It says you may spend one of my boosts to, rather than send to reserve target character, you can discard target character or permanent, but it still has that restriction of with hand cost 2 or less. This is better, but not that much better.
Nope, not that much better. I really wish that hand cost had improved.
Yeah, if it was discard target character or permanent with hand cost 3 or less, the actual off you go that could hit a permanent, that would be cool. This guy is neat, probably only like 1 point better, to be honest. Goes up from a 3 to a 4 for me, because discard is good, and it can hit permanents, which in the limited format, permanent usage is pretty high, I'd say, compared to Trial by Frost or Beyond the Gates. There's a lot of really, really good permanents in this set.
Are the really good ones hand cost 2 or less?
I'm thinking of the rare ones, like the Tech Lab units that like resupply and increase your reserve limit. That one's 2 or less. There's some other 2 or less ones that aren't that good to target. Things like Bug Out Bag, your favorite card.
I think you're targeting characters like 3 out of 4 times in limited.
Yeah,
for something sure. That they played fresh from hand. Now, granted, again, this is an onboard trick, but they also kind of have to play into it to some extent. They may be able to control for it by playing characters from reserve that fit the targeting criteria. But you can also just kind of keep holding this, because likely if it's a threat, you have 1 boost on it. So you may be able to stick another boost on it while you wait for your opponent to regretfully play a 2 from hand that you get to blow up, So that said, I think it's just 1 better. I think it's a 5.
Yeah, did I already give it a 4? I think I did. Yeah, it was a 4 for me.
Oh, wait.
And
I said 4. I'm looking way ahead. Sorry. Yeah, I'm a 4 on it. We already talked about ratings. Anyway, Lyra.
Yeah, so the Lyra version is the same as the rare. It just now has the Lyra passive support ability, which is when you play another character with a base statistic of 0, gain a boost up to a max of 2. This synergizes well with that. It has a base statistic of its own of 0. It also, notably, is an artist in Lyra.
Yep.
So the band wants the engraver. You know, it's looking for an artist. This one's going to be giving tats outside of the show.
For sure.
Yeah, this is fine. I kind of want to give it a 5 just because of that added benefit of being an artist.
This is
And
what
it
I was
synergizes
thinking
well.
of when I said it's one better. It is one better because this passive support ability is way, way easier to trigger.
Especially in limited, like you've been saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I like it. Potential character type synergies, easier support ability. I'm in. I'll play this guy.
Yeah, not bad. That's Yzmir Engraver.
Next up, we got Yzmir Nurse. 3 from hand, 2 from reserve for a 2/2/2 character mage. With a from hand ability, you may sacrifice a character. If you do, I gain 2 boosts. So, for this math to work, for this to be an advantage, you want to sacrifice a 1/1/1 or worse for the most part. I mean, for it to break even, you sacrifice a 2/2/2. But for it to like feel like an improvement to your board, sacrificing a 1/1/1 or worse. There are some 1/1/0s and 2/0/0s that you could sacrifice. The other consideration is if you have a character that fits that description, or really just a character that's in an expedition where your opponent has played something that is going to demolish that expedition, then you might as well get that thing out of the way, assuming it has fleeting. I don't want to sacrifice something fresh for this effect basically ever. Ideally, I'm sacrificing a token.
Yep.
So, sort of conditional in its value. I will say from reserve as a 2-mana 2/2/2, that's fine. You play those in limited all the time. Where are you at on it?
Yeah, so I actually have a lot to talk about for this card. I am the resident Lindaway player, of course. If you've watched any of my previous videos, I've played a lot of Lindaway. She is probably my favorite hero. I saw some decks trying this, so I gave it a shot, and I took it to our most recent LGS event and played this in place of the Katagiran Alchemist, which is another 3-drop from hand that doesn't have the sacrifice of character effect. It just gets 2 boosts when you play it from hand, so it's a 3-mana 3/3/3. The difference between this and the Alchemist is the Alchemist is 1 from reserve for a 1/1/1. This is 2 from reserve for a 2/2/2. You also have to sacrifice a character to get the boosts from this thing. So on its face, it can be better than the Alchemist if you have something to sacrifice. I actually did not like this card during our playtesting at the LGS. I found it obviously not good on turn 1 because you have nothing to sacrifice. Right. Unless you're like the first player is Lindaway and you can make your Maw for 0 mana. But even then, it's not even that good. It's fine. It's a 3-mana 4/4. Like your opponent's just going to play to the other side and it's still going to be a 1/1. And the Alchemist would have been the same thing. It would have been a 3-mana 3/3/3. They would have played to the other side if you were the first player. It's the same outcome. I actually don't like this card. I wanted to like it, and I really like the call to the jellyfish that the nurse is choking, telling you to sacrifice the jellyfish Lindaway. I thought this would be better, but after having played with it, I think I'm going to go back to the Alchemist. The 1 from reserve is just so much less than 2 from reserve. So,
and for clarity, you were playing the common version.
Yes, I was playing the common.
What would you give it?
Man, I think this card was a little bit overhyped. I think I'm going to give it a 3.
I'm going to give it a 4. I don't think this is great, and it may not work in every deck. I think you want to potentially pair this card with Ordis or Axiom, things that generate some amount of tokens or tend to have cheaper stuff. I think the key to evaluating this card is understanding the tactical application of putting 2 boosts on this thing on the expedition you're not losing badly by taking something that is going to lose anyway. It is also, again, very important to remember you want to try to use this with fleeting or token characters so that you're not burning a use of a card. But it has some amount of reasonable potential. It is certainly not above replacement. There are better 3-drops to be playing in this limited format by a mile, but you'll end up playing this a decent amount of the time. When we look at the rare, same cost, same stats, slight change to the rules text here. From hand, you may sacrifice a character. If you do, target character gains 2 boosts. How much is this better? I mean, it's a little bit better. Flexibility matters, but like it doesn't change the amount of boosts.
Yeah, I don't think it's much better. I don't even know if it earns an extra point from me.
Yeah, I don't think it does for me either.
Especially it's taken the rare slot, and it doesn't really do enough to warrant a rare slot, I don't think. So, again, I think this is a 3, honestly.
I think part of why this doesn't really change things too much for limited is that you're removing one of your targets by using the ability. So, like, sure, it's flexibility, but only in the circumstances where, like, you're playing this fairly late in the game and there's other stuff to be choosing from and then choosing to target. So, it's whatever. Not that great of an upgrade. Faction shifted into Axiom, as I sort of anticipated. Axiom is kind of one of those other fits for this. Same cost, same stats, different text. From hand, you may sacrifice a robot or permanent. If you do, I gain 2 boosts. Huh. So obviously,
this is weird.
Brass bugs are like your number 1 target. Also, Axiom does have permanents that kind of have a one-shot effect and then just sit there waiting to be sacked. It's still weird, though. I agree.
Yeah, this is weird. I think they put it in Axiom because Axiom is also the faction that has the jellyfish, and jellyfish is on the dang art. So the downside is the jellyfish is not a robot or a permanent, so this does not synergize with the card. I don't think this is very good.
That's a real flavor nombo.
Yeah, it really is. I don't know, man. This might be the worst version of the card. It takes a rare slot. Oh, this is tough. It's clearly meant to synergize with like the bug out bag, which we keep talking about. You sacrifice the bug out bag, you get the 2 boosts. It's already made the brass bug.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is still a 3 for me all around, I think.
Yeah, and I'm staying locked at 4. I do think the permanent clause, makes it a little bit, in some ways, easier to maintain your board when you use this effect. It's also worth mentioning for all of these versions of this card, it is a May. So, like, if you can't make it work effectively to your advantage, then at worst, it's a 3-mana 2/2/2. Not what you want to be doing with 3 mana, but it is still a dude and better than a mana convergence. So you'll do that some amount of the time too. So, but yeah, this card is just not great overall.
Yeah, I agree. I will say I'm confused as to why the hat is changing shape between the arts. I don't know if you noticed the common has like a pointy tip.
I didn't. I would have expected the bag to change, not the hat.
Yeah, the hat changed shape. I don't really understand that.
They like to change the hats on these characters.
There's also like, there's an open robe or dress thing going on here that's not on the con. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, that's Yzmir Nurse. Let's move on to the Korgan Informant. 3 from hand, 2 from reserve. 2/3/2. Not bad stats. That's basically the equivalent of Baba Yaga, which is 3 from hand, 2 from reserve. 3/2/2. People already play that card. So it says, when you play me from hand, remove up to 2 counters from target card in play or in reserve.
You're missing
notably this can't target hero cards.
You're missing the funniest part of this card. By far the funniest part.
Character Bureaucrat, Mage, Messenger has 3 types.
Yeah.
It is a bureaucrat, which is kind of funny.
Are there Mage and Messenger type interactions?
I don't think so, but there are several messengers in this set. Yeah, this card is interesting. The removing 2 counters from target card and play in reserve can be a pseudo removal spell in limited. There's a lot of boosts that are going around in this set. If something's been building up boosts in reserve from their passive support abilities, you can take them off. You can peel these off of permanents that are building up. There's some popular ones like the Town Square. the mess, things of that nature that give your opponent card advantage or extra boosts. This card is pretty versatile, and I found myself often wanting to play it if I had it. Did you have a chance to see this?
On neither side of the field did I see the informant, but I generally agree with your assessment. There's going to be times when you play this as a 3-mana 2/3/2 with no text, and like, again, not ideal, not the worst outcome ever for 3 mana. And from reserve, a 2-mana 2/3/2, you're pretty happy about that. Like, that's a little bit above rate for your 2 mana. So I do think you end up playing this card more often than not. I do think that in the situations where it's at its best, it's effectively 3 mana 4/5/4 in stats because you're reducing their stats by 2/2 from 2 boosts. And that you're going to feel really good about.
Yeah, that's great.
Overall, I give it a 5.
I was also going to give this a 5. I think this is just solid all the way around. I could see you playing this in constructed even at the common slot if counters end up being a big role player. The rare is very similar. It just now has Scout 1. In addition to all the other effects, all the stats are the same. Scout 1 is great. We love, sort of an after you. This is, again, pseudo removal where you can pay 1 mana to take 2 counters off of something and kind of pass the turn back, react to what your opponent's going to do. In the end, it is still the same mana cost. It would be one scout and then 2 from reserve to get the same body, but you're breaking it up into 2 parts, and you get the advantage of seeing what your opponent does. This card is sweet.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I like this card. I've seen some decks already playing this on 39 cards.
Interesting.
So I think I'm probably going to rate this relatively high. You're probably not going to play this on turn 1 or 2 ever in constructed, maybe in limited, but yeah.
Out of a lack of other options, potentially you might do it, but that's a pretty bad turn 1.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give it a 6.
Yeah, I was also going to give it a 6.
Average.
I think it's one better. Flexibility matters. I like being able to whole fill my mana curve. I've talked about this before. It's just like, your turn's kind of awkward. Maybe it's turn 3. You got two drops, and then you just have this 1 spare mana. Hopefully by then your opponent has played maybe one of the 1 drops out of their reserve that's, collected a couple boosts as part of their strategy for winning an expedition. And you get to kind of blow up that strategy for 1 mana. I'm down. Scout 1's just great. It's the best scout cost. So.
Yep. Until we see a Scout 0. Okay, Korgan Informant. So this is the same card, but this one is Ordis. This is all the same as the rare. It's just faction shifted over to Ordis. This card's good. I mean, it's the same thing. It's a bureaucrat, so maybe there's something funny here that you can do. I'm not aware, but if there's a Waru strategy where you can scout it, put it to sleep, and then it can stick around somehow, I'm not sure. We've seen that with Floral Tint and some other colors you can do that combo with. But this card's cool. I don't think it's that much better in Ordis, if at all, so it's probably just still a 6 for me.
Yeah, it's exactly the same. The faction context does not change anything, particularly for I will play this card, and I will enjoy playing it.
That is Korgan Informant.
Next up is the Yzmir Moth Breeder. 4 from hand, 2 from reserve for a 2/2/2 character mage. Has Scout 2, and from hand, create a Mana Moth 2/2/2 illusion token in target expedition. I like this card. Because on either side, you can get a 2 mana 2/2/2. When you pay the 4, you get a 4 mana 4/4 split into 2 bodies that you can distribute across expeditions. That's great optionality. I think this is super solid. What do you think?
Yeah, I love this card. I want to try this in Lindaway, but I didn't want to try the common. I wanted to try the rare. So I didn't actually open any of the rare for me to try. So I was trying the nurse first, but I've already talked about that. I think this card is great as well. I don't know if it's going to see a ton of play in constructed just because it's pretty vanilla. It just makes some statistics on the board and doesn't actually draw cards or interact with your opponent at all. But I do think the card is great, and I love the art. So Scout is awesome as well. I don't know. I think this is like a solid 6 for me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I want to bump it up 1. I want to put it to 7, just because I think this is a little bit above a lot of the other 4s in the set. And the fact that it is optionally a 2 instead, I mean, that's just huge. It just gives you a lot of flexibility and room to play with your mana slots. So I'm in. I like this card quite a bit.
Yeah.
You mentioned the rare. Some adjustments here. We go to a 3 from hand, 1 from reserve for a 1/1/1, still with Scout 2, still with the Create a Mana Moth ability. So effectively 1 discount, -1 across the board in all stats. I think this makes it the same. I think it's better for constructed, but like for limited purposes, it's all the same math. 3 from hand for 3/3 worth of stats, split across 2 expeditions if you want. 1 from reserve for 1/1 worth of stats. I think you're marginally more likely to always play from hand instead of scout, much in the same way that anytime that we've had a scout cost that is 1 less than the from hand cost, it's like, well, I'd rather just also get the body. I think that's going to happen, but like, it's still good.
Yeah, it's funny because I was talking about the Alchemist earlier in Lindaway. This rare slot actually does a similar thing to the Alchemist, where it's a 3 mana 3/3/3 essentially, and you can play it on turn 1, and it's actually good, you know. But it does take a rare slot over the Alchemist being a common.
Right.
So I think it is better for constructed. It just might be tough to try and figure out where this goes. It is great though, like you said, if there's any version of this card that's going to see playing constructed, it's probably this one. So I think that will bump it up to a 7 for me.
Okay, I'm going to maintain my 7 because I don't think it changes too much, honestly. Like your lower threshold for optionality is still 2 when you're dealing with it from hand. And so, you know, you're still going to want that. Now, we do faction shift into Ordis, and we get just the common version fully. So 4 from hand, 2 from reserve for a 2/2/2. Scout 2, Mega Mana Moth. Yeah, no different feeling for me. Still super rock solid. I give it a 7.
Yeah, rock solid as well. I don't think you would play this in a lot of Ordis decks. There's not a ton of synergy around like making mana moths and having a 4 mana 4/4/4. Like, sure, it's a token generator, but Ordis is really good at making tokens already. And this one is just going to be a rare slot for you. Like you can get this effect in this stat line somewhere else that's not a rare slot in Ordis very easily. So I think this might be the worst version of this card, but that doesn't make it bad. I think it's just like a 5, honestly.
Yeah, I can imagine like someone budget brewing for Ordis. They get one of these. They probably play it until they get the stuff that does this type of effect a little bit more efficiently or a little bit better or whatever, or, you know, less of a. But like kitchen table altered, you know, you're going to be pretty happy to get this card.
Absolutely. I'm surprised that it says target expedition in all versions, because that is really good flexibility.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind when you're playing this card. It does not have to be in the expedition you play it in.
Totally.
That's the Moth Breeder. I read this as a mouth breather as well, so enjoy that at your LGS. Make sure you spread that around.
It's like a mind virus you're spreading. Anyway.
All right, moving on to Silas Cryptic Warlock. This is one of the spoiled cards, I believe. This is a 4 from hand, 5 from reserve character mage. It has 2/4/4. Don't love that. But it says, when you play me from hand, draw a card. I love that. It does have the passive support ability of Yzmir. When you play a spell, I gain a boost up to a maximum of 2. That's fine. We've already talked that to death about how much harder that is to trigger than all of the other ones. The stat line is not great on this guy, but getting to draw a card when you play it, love it. This would probably be a 4-drop in any Yzmir deck I'm playing in limited. So, what do you think?
You'll slam this card. You'll play it. You'll pick it sort of maybe like middle to top of the pack, somewhere in there. Like after some of the rares and stuff are gone, you'll probably pick this up pretty urgently after that. Because like, sure, it doesn't have 4 in all of its stats, but you choose when to play it and ideally where to play it, and you structure that so that the 4s are relevant to the expedition you're playing it in, right? And in those circumstances, a 4 a 4 play from hand that is relevant for stats in the expedition you care about and draws you a card. Like, even if they take the expedition from you, like, they probably had to invest at least this much mana, if not more, and they probably didn't get a card out of the deal. And that is a winning exchange, even if you lose the expedition, as long as it doesn't lose you the game. So, like, yeah, you're gonna play this guy quite frequently, I think. The passive support abilities, who cares? I would probably give it like I'm struggling between 6 and 7. I'm gonna go 7 just because draw card's so good.
Yeah, it is really good. He's much worse from the reserve side, like we said, triggering that passive support ability is going to be, you might get a boost out of this, and then it's a 5 mana 3/5/5, and that's just fine. We just talked about how 4 mana 2/4/4 is fine. Yeah, I'd say most of the time this is going to be a 5 mana 2/4/4 for you in limited. In constructed, this guy's probably not going to see any play. He's like a higher mana cost Baba Yaga. I'm not really sure. I think I'm just going to be safe and give it a 5.
Cool.
The rare is quite different. So this is 4 from hand, 4 from reserve, down from 5 from reserve for the common. This also has base statistics of 0/0/0 across the board. We love that. It's amazing. It says same effect from hand, draw a card. This also now has, when you play me from anywhere, I gain 1 boost per card in your hand. So, last week or the week before when we did draft for Whisper from the Maze, I pack 1, pick 1 this card because I thought it was good. Boy, was I wrong. I tried to play this in limited, and I built my deck around Yzmir as a pack 1, pick 1 because I thought this card was going to be solid. I almost always had 2 or 3 cards in my hand when I had this card in my hand. And a 4 mana 2/2/2 or 3/3/3 is not good.
Yeah.
So I really blundered there. In constructed, I think this card is a lot better.
Yes.
There are a lot of easier ways to draw cards for cheaper amounts of mana. Think of like Magical Training or any of the other plethora of Yzmir cards that draw you cards. In limited, I fell into the trap. Did you see this card?
Well, I played with the faction shifted version of this card, which is very similar to the rare. And it was nuts for me. But here's the deal. The rare versions of Silas are secretly Lyra cards because they are incredible with Fen, specifically. Fen allows you to play from your reserve quite a bit and end up just accumulating stuff in your hand that you haven't had the chance to play yet. And then playing Silas, like when I played Silas, it was often a 4 mana 6/6/6. It was that drew me a card. It was nuts. Like, so it's super deck dependent. It is not a Windmill Slam pack 1, pick 1 because it requires you to have other stuff in your factions. I really do think it works best with Lyra. It does encourage you to do more resupplying, more drawing of cards where you can, but higher value on resupply and repeatable resupply effects so that you can play more from your reserve. It's a tough one to evaluate because when it's good, it's great. And when it's bad, it's terrible.
Yeah, it was really bad for me. I played this, I think my colors were Yzmir, Bravos, and Ordis. And like,
suboptimal.
I just couldn't. Yeah, I could not make this. Yzmir and Bravos, biggest nombo. Pro tip for all you drafters and limited player out there: don't play those colors together. They're really bad. The passive support abilities are indirect conflict of each other. One wants you to play characters. One wants you to play spells. Okay, your deck can only do one of those well. Okay. Yeah, I learned that the hard way. This card is. It's cool, and I think it's good in constructed, like I've already said. I think this is going to see play. It might even be a Baba Yaga replacement, because Baba Yaga is a 3 mana 3/2/2. This can be a 4 mana 4/4 pretty easily, or better. I think this card's good. I'm going to give it a 7, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I gave the common a 7. I think the upside for this card is higher than the common, but it does require you to build around it specifically. I think honestly what's going to happen is in most like draft pods, Your neighbors are going to pick this card higher than they should. You will end up not seeing it very often. And, you know, when you do get a chance to get one at like pick 5 or 6, then you're pretty happy, assuming that you've already been building in a direction that activates this, like some sort of Lyra Axiom Yzmir, or in the case of the faction shift, Ordis Axiom Lyra. Wow. My brain just broke for a second trying to remember, because like you get your resupply stuff out of both Axiom and Lyra. You get Fen out of Lyra, and you can make some stuff happen that makes this card really, really good. Outside of that context, in a traditional Yzmir build, or Yzmir paired with factions that don't activate this as well, it gets really not so good. Like 4 mana 3/3 is the floor where I want to play this, and when it's below that, I'm pretty unhappy. That said, I will also sometimes draw this card as part of my morning and actively make the choice to not mana something so that my hand is bigger to make this guy bigger. I think that is a play pattern you need to be aware of and be considerate of. Don't just default to always manaing when you have Silas in your hand.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All that said, I give it a 7 still. My experiences were just too good with this card for me to rate it much lower than that. And the ceiling is quite high. I think you just have to be considerate in how you build your deck and how you play when you have this card.
Makes sense. The faction shifted is straight over to Ordis. It is just the rare. Everything is exactly the same, except for it now has the Ordis passive support ability, which is when another character joins your expeditions, I gain a boost. We've learned that is the easiest one to trigger. It is very easy. It triggers off of any tokens, you playing a character. It's very, very easy to do. I think it's the best passive support ability in the set, just because of how easy it is to trigger. This is the best version of this card, I think.
It is.
I think that will bump it up to an 8 for me. I was just going to give the context that in Ordis, the faction shifted Baba Yaga has been suspended and constructed, and I think this is just a direct replacement, to be honest. This can just slot right into where those decks were playing Baba Yaga, and this card's going to be great in those decks.
Oh, Baba Lasagna. Yes, this is the version of the card that I actually had and that I played with. So I didn't have to deal with Yzmir. I got to play Ordis, which felt a little better. And this was the card I was just dunking on people with. It is an 8. It is supported as an 8 because of that passive support ability. Setting your threshold of like, all right, from hand, you want to set this up so that it's like a 3/3 or 4/4 or better. With Fen and some other effects, you can make it much better. And then from reserve, not getting the draw card, but getting a higher baseline, almost guaranteed. It is, again, far more likely to be a 4/4 or sometimes better as well. So I'm in. I really like this card. This Ordis version I do view as a little bit more of an early pick, potentially even Windmill Slam type card where you just are taking it because it's great. So for what that's worth.
I will say we rated Sap Dwinde really highly in one of our previous reviews.
Yeah, totally blows up Silence.
Yeah, this is a really, really good target for Sap Dwinde.
Yeah.
After they play it, they tap out for it, they make a big guy, you just steal all the boosts, and now you're winning. So
yeah, they said 4 mana draw card.
Yeah.
Not happy about that.
Well, that's Silas.
Yeah, next up we have Merlin. 6 from hand, 3 from reserve for a 3/3 question mark. Character mage. Obviously from hand, you better be giving me something good. It has Scout 4. Ugh. And from hand, you may send target character to reserve. So now you see what you're getting for your 6 mana. Unconditional, send a character to reserve. I don't care about their hand costs. I don't care about their size. I don't care about anything. I'm shooting them out. The Scout gives it flexibility. I don't know that I like paying 4 for this effect overall. I feel like that's a little bit overpriced. That said, I think you were probably playing this more often than not. And from reserve, 3 mana, 3/3 with nothing else is like perfectly serviceable.
Yeah, I kind of hate this card, I'm going to be honest. I wish the Scout was Scout 3,
Yep.
because then it makes this... It gives you the same kind of split-up effect that we've seen with a few of these Scout cards, where it'd be 3 from hand, 3 from reserve, and in total be the same as the hand cost, being 6. But if you want to get the Scout effect and then also play the character, you're paying 7 total mana. That's a stinker, I think. I don't really like this card. I'm probably going to rate this a 4.
Ooh.
I'm rating it a 4 just because it has removal on it, and like you're going to put this in your top end in your limited deck, and you're going to pay 6 mana for your 3/3/3 and remove their best thing, but you're going to tap out to do it. I don't know. It's below average. It's probably not a card I'm ever reaching for.
Yeah, in that turn 4 scenario, right? To have 6 mana, you'd want to
Yes.
not be on the play if you're going to make this the one thing that you play that turn, which, is unpredictable best. I think you're far more often scouting and then playing this from reserve, and you're doing that because you need that ability. You need to get rid of something, ideally on that turn 4 where you can do that and play a 2-drop and have at least a shot at winning 1 expedition. It's not great, but I would end up probably playing this more often than not when I have it in my pool, either in draft or sealed, and so I give it a 5.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Now we jump to the rare, where we have everything the same except a change in our from hand ability. You may discard target character or permanent. Again, no conditions, more targets, and a better effect. I'm very much in.
Yeah, this is much better.
Spending 4 to discard a character, something fresh from hand, ideally at a stage of the game where it's large or really impactful to their strategy. Maybe they grabbed a unique or something, and just saying absolutely not, get that out of here. You're going to do that more often than you're going to use the permanent mode for sure. And it has all the same modularity that the common has. I'm giving it a 7. I like this effect quite a bit more.
This is much, much better than the common, in my opinion. This has the effect of the Sap Overflow spell, which is in this set. I think that just says discard a target character or permanent for 4 mana. And you can do that with Scout. This is just on a body now.
Yep.
So you're paying 2 extra mana to get a 3/3/3 when you just play this from hand. You get a Sap Overflow and a 3/3/3. I think this, like I said, much better. Still don't know if you're really going to play it in Constructed, but I think it's enough better to go over the hump, and I think I'm going to give it a 6.
Reasonable. We faction shift into Axiom, where it is exactly the same as the rare. Still great. I don't know that the faction context makes any difference here whatsoever.
No, I don't think so. Still a 6, I think.
Yep. Still 7 for me. I think the only maybe caveat is, like you mentioned, Sap Infusion is there, so there are other options, but I think this is better than Sap Infusion because it is Sap Infusion plus body options. So
Overflow, for what it's worth.
Oh, Overflow. My bad.
No, it's all good. Sap Infusion, I think, is the one that puts counters on something with arcane counters, something like that.
Yeah, Merlin. I'll play the rares. I mean, I'll play all of them, but I'll be happy with the rares for sure.
Yeah, I'd be unhappy with the common, but I like the rares. Not bad.
Your standards are Merlin. So high, Bill. Yeah.
I know. I'm a picky boy. All right, on to the Hunger. This is a lot of fanboys' favorite cards from this set. This has notably one of the best arts in this set because Lindaway is on it. Shout out. Hunger. 9 from hand, 3 from reserve. You heard that right. 9 from hand. Character Spirit. For a 3/3/3, cue the Minecraft sound or whatever. When you play me from hand, discard all other cards in play or in reserve. Okay. When a card goes to the discard pile, I gain 1 boost. So, this is 9 from hand. And I did look up the rules text here. It says discard all other cards in play or in reserve. I read that as a choice. You either pick all cards in play or in reserve. Turns out that is not the case. It is all cards in play and in reserve. So that makes this card better. But I don't think this card is really playable, especially at the common. the common slot. This is 9 mana. So
Yeah.
we're talking at the earliest in Yzmir. As far as I know, there's no way to ramp in Yzmir. You're playing this on turn 6, and you're tapping all the way out for it
Turn 7.
to win. Is it turn 7?
You start with 3 mana. 6 turns later, you have 6 more mana. That's 9.
Oh yeah, turn 7.
Turn
yeah,
7.
You're tapping all the way out for this thing that you can't predict will be larger than a 3/3/3 that will win you 1 lane.
Yep.
Yeah, this card is not good. A big stinker in my opinion. I'm gonna give this thing a 2.
Yeah, I think in limited you're gonna mana this like 95% of the time if it's in your deck at all. And at that point, I'd rather have nearly anything. I think like the saving grace is that if you have a decent amount of resupply, you have a chance at a 3 mana 3/3/3 that has when a card goes to the discard pile, I gain a boost, which is like okay. But having a face that is just so bad, I'm giving it a 1. I don't think I'm ever gonna put this card in a deck. And if I do, I'm in a really desperate situation.
Yeah, I only gave it a 2 just because it is at least playable from the reserve. So like if you have some way to put it there.
Sure.
A 3 mana 3/3/3 that has an upside of when a card goes to the discard pile, I gain a boost. Because you can make that happen on your side of the board pretty reasonably.
I'm here to send a message, which is I'm giving it a 1. Don't play this.
Yeah. You probably don't want to play this most of the time.
No.
But the rare is pretty big shift. Instead of 9 from hand, 3 from reserve, it is 8 from hand, 6 from reserve, ? Still 3/3/3. All the same rules text, except now, if I'm fleeting, I am gigantic. Still bad. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. This card is... Like, it only gets gigantic if you play it from the back half, which means you're not actually getting the discard everything and play in reserve to give it those extra boosts. I don't know, man. This card is weird. It's still a 2 for me, I think.
Yeah. God. You know what it reminds me of? That Ordis Big Bird Simurg.
Yeah.
Isn't that like 7 for a 4/4/4 gigantic?
Yep.
So this is 1 less mana for 1 worse stats, still gigantic. I'm still not playing this card. I don't know. Like, I think it's in some ways worse because the optionality from reserve is actually far more constrained. 6 and 8 mana, pretty close in terms of the region of the game, in terms of time that you're going to end up playing it. And like, there's just better stuff to do. I really hate tapping out for 1 big thing. At the very least with this 1 big thing, you are clearing the way if they were somehow playing some sort of anchored or a sleep strategy. But like on the turns where you tap out to do this and you went first, it's so bad. It's still
It's
like
terrible.
crazy bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it a little better? I guess it's like 1 better, but still don't play this card. I'm giving it a 2.
Yep, that's the rare. The faction shifted is exactly the rare, but in Bravos. This
No
is better
different.
in Bravos.
Is it?
It's better because it's Saudi at least like draws you a card. when you
Oh,
play this.
true. Yeah.
Maybe. And this also, it can get extra boosts if you're playing it with Basira.
Sure.
It is better in Bravos. Not much better. I think I'll give it a 3. Just because at least it can draw you a card, maybe.
What did you give the Yzmir rare version?
2.
Okay. So this is 1 better to you.
Yeah, I think it's 1 better for me.
Here's why I'm not sold that it'll trigger at Saudi is that it's 8 mana. And like a lot of the stuff that is triggering at Saudi in this set, a lot of what this set has done is given you access to ways to cheat on the mana and still get the expensive stuff into play earlier. So like the turn where you raw play 8 from hand, I don't know that that's actually likely to trigger at Saudi. I also don't think Atsadi wants to play something that isn't cheating on Atsadi's ability.
Well, I did learn something recently that I was going to try and employ in our next draft. So if you're playing Atsadi in Limited, you can start bug fixing Atsadi right away. Bug fix, you can take a counter off of Atsadi and make it 2/2/2. And that reduces his counters from 5 to 4. And then if you do it again, it goes down even lower. So keep that in mind. I think this card is better in limited than it is in constructed, but still, not above the playable threshold of 5, I guess is what I'm putting myself at.
I'm not sold. I'm giving it still a 2. I don't think the faction context makes enough of a difference. It's really we're only talking about heroes that interact with hunger, because you're never playing another card on the turn that you play hunger. It costs way too much mana. So like, pass.
That's the hunger.
This is Sap Infusion. This is there's too many things with sap and then some other word, and I don't know what they all do. Anyway, let's learn what this one does. Sap Infusion is 2 from hand, 3 from reserve for a spell boon. Target character gains X plus 2 boosts, where X is my number of arcane counters. And this has a passive support ability of when you play another spell, I gain 1 arcane counter, up to a max of 3. So on its face, this is 2 from hand to give target character 2 boosts. From reserve, it's 3. You better at least have one arcane counter on it, because I really don't want to pay 3 for that effect. But could be up to 5 boosts total, and potentially more with augment. This is the type of card I don't like. I don't like spending mana to win more on a character I've already played, to put all my eggs in one basket like we talked about. I'm not in. What do you think?
Yeah, this is one of the cards I played when I was just talking about how I pick one Silas, and I was going hard into Yzmir. I picked Ephanis as my hero in draft. I was trying to fill up my spell slots, and I ended up having to play 2 or maybe even 3 of these cards, and it was not great. It was sort of a 2-mana 2/2/2 because you're just boosting your guy by 2 boosts when you play this from hand. But like, I never wanted to play it from reserve, and it required you to play so many other spells first, which are also taking up reserve slots. This wasn't very good.
Yeah, the spell that needs more spells to be better is just like, we're just compounding on the Yzmir weakness here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird, because in order to like get the maximum benefit of these cards in your reserve, you need a big reserve limit, which means you need to be playing those permanents that say increase your reserve limit. I forget what they're called. Scholar's Vault, maybe? We'll get to it. And that, like, you're playing a permanent now in your spells matter deck, so it's like, it's so weird. I don't know. They need permanents that like don't, or not permanents. They need spells that don't count toward your reserve slot, like they do with characters right now.
Or just more token producing spells. Like, I think if Yzmir had a couple of spells that made Manamoths really explicitly or something in this set, and maybe they do, maybe I don't know them all, but I would like them a lot more. But as is, it's rough.
With Ephanis, it is at least, it's a 2-mana give 3 boosts.
Sure.
And from the back half, it's at minimum 3-mana 3 boosts, which is fine. I wasn't super pleased with it, like I said, but it was playable at least. So I think I'm going to give it a 4.
I want to clarify why it is more problematic in Altered than maybe Magic to just make a guy bigger. And it's because there's 2 expeditions. So making one guy bigger does not necessarily improve your chances of getting a double expedition win on your opponent. It really just improves your chance of winning an expedition you already had a presence in. And that makes them worse. Like, you compare this to other like temporary pump spells or whatever in Magic, and like, this is worse than those things. And so you can't use the same sort of heuristic if you are like me coming from Magic. I give it a 3. You'll play this some amount of the time. I don't think I will ever be thrilled with it. At the very least, it does trigger your passive support abilities and maybe help you win one expedition. I really am going to avoid playing this card, though. You said you were a 4?
Yeah.
Got it. All right. At our rare slot, a big level up on the art. Looks really cool. We get a discount on our from hand cost down to 1. And we get a change in our rules language here. It says, do the following X+1 times, where X is my number of arcane counters. And what is the following? It is target character gains 1 boost. So here's why this is like absolutely horrendous templating, but the reason is you can target different characters every time you would execute this action. So on its face, it is 1 mana from hand to do this once. 1 mana for target character gains 1 boost. From reserved, it's 3 mana. You really better have some arcane counters on it. But if you, let's say you maximize it, it's 3 mana for target character gains 1 boost, target character gains 1 boost, target character gains 1 boost, target character gains 1 boost. Each of those targets can be different. So that's better. But man, do you need those arcane counters to make this work. This is, I think, worse from hand. Even though it's cheaper. I don't know. This card's so weird.
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head, at least, if there are characters that do something when they gain a boost. But if there are, that's really good here.
Yeah, totally.
Like, you get to keep targeting it and keep giving it boosts. That can be super powerful depending on the card. Like I said, I can't think of one right now, but tell us in the comments. I'm probably forgetting something. I love that, and I love that it's 1 mana. So I think this is better than the common. It probably gives it 1 point up to a 5 for me. You're going to be playing this in a Faunus, guaranteed. And that's going to be a 1 mana give 2 boosts, which is, not bad at all. Yeah, what do you think?
I think it's worse. In limited, it's definitely worse. Like, I'm just not doing this. 1 mana to give 1 boost to something, and often wash out a reserve for the from reserve ability of Sap Infusion. And when you do cast it, it often being 1 or 2 boosts, I'm just so not in for that for 3 mana. Like, at least your floor with the common was 2 boosts. This is a lower
It is
floor.
just a worse helping hand, which was banned or suspended in Yzmir. Yeah.
I give it a 2. I don't want this card.
I think I'll bump it back down to a 4. You've convinced me.
I'm just a hater. I'm a hater on spells like this. We faction shift into Bravos for the rare version with a change to the passive support ability of now saying, when you play a character, I gain 1 arcane counter up to a max of 3. Turns out way, way better. You just play characters all the time. So that said, I still hate it on its face because I don't want to do this for 1 mana. I will say, from reserve, I'm way more consistently going to be able to do this for approaching maximum value. And at that point, you have a little bit more chance to leverage the diversity of targeting and to do something meaningful. Again, that's probably like turn 6, 7 or later, because you also want characters in play that are going to care about getting these boosts and doing some other stuff. By the way, I thought of it. There's the Lyra characters that have if I'm boosted, do X, like reduce the cost from reserve for Lyra Drummer.
Sure. You can spread them out across the band.
Yeah, and like the basis is like balance out everyone's stats or whatever. This feels like it is a limited card at the end of the day. The Bravos version is the best version, I think. It's still not something I want to do that often. I would say the change in the passive support ability for me bumps it up 1 from the rare version, leaving it right in line with the common. So I put it at 3.
Yeah, I think if you're playing this in Constructed, you're going to be playing it in like Basira that wants to put boosts on things. You're going to be playing it in like a Seasoned deck.
Yeah.
But Seasoned is... It's really underexplored strategy, I would say, because I think there's a lot of potential there. It's just the seasoned characters are just so susceptible to removal right now. It's like maybe this will get better over time once there's better, more resilient seasoned characters or ways to protect them. I think I'm still just gonna give it a 4.
All right.
To be honest. And did I give 4 to all of the versions?
Sure did. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, 4 across the board for Sap Infusion. All right, that's Sap Overflow. I mean Infusion.
Hey!
XD. All right, Evanescence. Wake me up! Okay, so this is 2 from hand, 4 from reserve, Spell Disruption. It says, send to reserve target character with hand cost X plus 2 or less, where X is my number of arcane counters, then exhaust it. Okay, so weird thing about this templating is in this card right before it, this X was not in a circle.
Yeah, what the hell?
And it is here. I don't know. That's weird.
Well, because hand costs are always in circles like that.
Yeah. Strange. This card is sort of an off you go. It's a nod at off you go because off you go is also 2 from hand, 4 from reserve. However, on its face with no additional arcane counters, it is worse than off you go. It can only target something that has hand cost 2 or less rather than hand cost 3 or less. But this also exhausts it when you send it to reserve. Off you go doesn't do that. There's some trades here you can make. This also has the Yzmir passive support ability when you play another spell, gain an arcane counter so that you can hit bigger things with this card when you play it from your reserve. This card's weird. I played it in my limited decks in pre-release and in draft when I was playing Yzmir just because it was removal, but I don't think I ever cast it. Mana'd it most of the time. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's below average for removal. I think, again, if you're playing Yzmir, you're probably going to have to play some amount of this stuff because you want the spell triggers. And so you're going to do some this is the problem with Yzmir in this limited format. I feel like you're going to do some kind of below average stuff to make other below average stuff hit average or slightly above average. And it feels like a lot of just air, a lot of just nothing happening. We've talked about hand cost 2 or less is a relevant amount of targets, but not the best ones. And paying 4 mana to send to reserve something, even if it is hand cost 5, which is the maximum of that just this card on its own can produce, it's hard to even break even. You're going to spend 4 mana no matter what, but the chances that you get this up to 2 or 3 counters and there's a target for you to hit with it, it's not great. You'll play this a decent amount of time, often just for its face. And I think that means it's like a 4. There's just better removal in this set.
Yeah, you're not playing this in Constructed, I don't think, ever. So I'm going to give this a solid 2.
Huge.
Just because I like the nod toward Evanescence the band, and the art is sick.
The art is cool. Yeah. Getting Thanos
the rare.
snapped.
Yeah, rest in peace, Spider-Man. So the rare says all the same things, except you can kind of split it up. It says do the following X plus 1 times, where X is my number of arcane counters. It does not gain the boost to hand cost targeting, however. So send to reserve target character with hand cost 2 or less. You can't actually pick something that is higher mana cost. You can just send more cards to the reserve that are hand cost 2 or less with arcane counters. This is weird. I don't think it makes the card any better, to be honest.
No.
Because I don't know. It's like it's kind of competing for a Blizzard in Constructed, which is 5 mana, send to reserve all characters in an expedition. And this, you have to be playing more spells to get that same kind of effect. You can only target hand cost 2 or less. I think this is not good. Still going to give it a 2.
Yeah, Blizzard is way better than this.
Yeah.
But that was true of the other side as well. I don't know. It is somewhat... I don't know what do I even make of this? What do I make of this card? On its face, it is literally the same thing. From reserve, it is better if your opponent is playing more tokens, more cheap stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I want to do that. I think it's still a 4. I'm mostly evaluating this card on its from hand because I think that's how I'm going to cast it 80% of the time or better. And I'd still give it a 4, but ugh. No,
yeah, that's the rare. Faction shifted into Axiom. This is pretty cool. I don't think Axiom has any kind of removal like this at all yet. They have things like Avalanche and Hooked, which are pretty particular about what they can target. This can hit things sort of in the same realm as Off You Go. Hand cost 2 or less is a bit worse than 3 or less, like Off You Go, but the passive support ability is now the Axiom passive support ability, where they gain arcane counters at noon. That's much, much better.
Way better. Like, so much better.
So much better. Yeah, this is just going to accrue value over time. Axiom's good at increasing their reserve limit, so you can just have this thing stick around if you need to. It can be like I think maximum you can hit 4 targets for 4 mana.
Right. Which you're happy with if you live that dream.
Absolutely. Yeah, this card is probably the best, or this version is probably the best of this card. So I think it's going to bump it up to like a 4 for me, because this is one of the better Axiom removal spells in this set. It might be the best one. I'm trying to remember. What Axiom removal spells are there in this set?
The sap one that I can't remember the second word of.
Sap Overflow?
Yeah. I wanted to say disposal. That's still not it. But yeah, I mean, that's just 4 mana, unconditional, get rid of some. Which I would argue is better than Evanescence, even at maximum counters, just because the virtue of you having maximum counters does not guarantee maximum targets. And so, like, your opponent has to be doing a fairly wide strategy for you to actually leverage the Firm Reserve at maximum value. That said, you are way more likely to actually get at least a counter on this. I will tell you this. If Evanescence is in my reserve, I'm never exhausting it. Because the turn that I have 2 targets, I'm playing it. I'm snapping this off. I'm getting rid of 2 things with immediacy. Because the chances of me getting 3 targets or 4 targets are vanishingly low. So for me, it's bumped up to a 5 because I actually could see myself casting this card from reserve where I couldn't for the other 2. It's still, I think, worse than your other removal options that are available in the set.
That makes sense. That's Evanescence. Wake me up.
I had to get it coming and going with the Evanescence.
Yes, sir.
Metamorphosis, 3 from hand, 3 from reserve for a spell Disruption. It is fleeting. And it says discard target character. Wow. Then create a Mana Moth 2/2 illusion token in its expedition. So you're effectively replacing the card they've played with a Mana Moth. But notably, it does say discard, which means that if it's something that they've played from hand, you're kind of getting rid of it twice. You're getting rid of the from reserve opportunity there. I think this card's pretty sweet. I would play this quite often. I will say it is way better later in the game when they're more likely to have played a 4, a 5, a 6, something like that, where the replacement you're giving them is way worse than the cost that they paid.
Yeah, I actually played this card a lot in Limited and pre-release, and I actually played this. I was just talking about how I built Lephanis and played Yzmir. I played 3 copies of this card because I opened a rare.
Wow.
So I had 2 of the common and a rare. I wanted this card to be better, but a lot of the time, what would happen is I would play my guy, just a dinky 2/2/2 a lot of the time, doing something else, and then I would want to Metamorphosis my opponent's thing, but it would just beat me or tie me a lot of the time if I just made a 2/2/2, because the mana cost of this card, the common, is just so much.
Yeah.
Like, you are getting rid of the thing that they made or the thing that they cast, but you're also still giving them not a negligible body. You're giving them a 2/2/2. So it's like almost the best use of this card is going to be your opponent has played a pretty nice Haymaker, think Silas or something, in the other expedition. You guys are already trading one for one, and then you can just discard that thing. They still win the expedition, but you get rid of their nice card. I don't know. I like this card, but at the same time, like, I have a love-hate relationship with it because it didn't do anything for me in Limited.
I think
you will probably play this in Constructed because there are a lot of really powerful things to get rid of, especially uniques. So
yeah, using this to blow up your opponent's unique in Constructed is going to be one of the primary uses, because a great many uniques either, they either do something really awesome the moment that you play them, and then it's kind of over, or they set up infinite loops, and like you need a way to break some of that stuff. Or, if not infinite loops, at least like repetitive play patterns with like, uniques that remove their own fleeting or whatever. So I don't know. I think this card is definitely matchup dependent in terms of its value. And you will have games where this is in your deck and you will have it in your hand for a couple turns, then eventually just be like, screw it, I'm gonna mana this thing because my opponent's clearly just playing low to the ground and I'm never like coming up in this equation. That said, I also think you need to look at this card as part of why this is disruptive to your opponent is that it is getting rid of their firm reserve opportunity for the card that target. The value of that is also marginally decreased in the set because of scout, and your opponent might be scouting stuff and then playing it from reserve. And so you don't have an opportunity to disrupt that with this card. But overall, I think you're probably going to play this more often than not. It doesn't blow me away as a piece of removal, but like I think it's pretty solid. I give it a 5.
Yeah, I think I have to give it a 5 too, even though I don't want to, just because it burned me when I played it. But
play better.
I think I'm gonna give
you should have
it a 5.
managed it.
Yeah, to be fair, like I'm still pretty salty about my last draft event because I played so many spells trying to make a Faunus work, and it fell right on its face. So just don't, like I said, do not draft Bravos and Yzmir together. Big Nombo, don't do that.
Doesn't work. Now, our jump to rare is a pretty nice one. We get a discount from hand from reserve down to 2 mana from 3. And a condition is added to the discard as a way of compensating for that discount. Discard target character with hand cost 5 or less, then create a mana moth 2/2. Turns out that's still frequently the targets you were going to hit anyway. Sure, you're not going to hit your opponent's 6s, but like most decks are going to play between 1 and 3 6+ cost cards at best. Often, I mean, I've certainly played limited decks with 0 cards of those costs and not been unhappy. So I still think this hits the vast majority of targets that you would have hit anyway, and you're much more likely to fit it into your mana curve on a turn where it's relevant at 2 mana. If you are able to get something with hand cost 5 for 2 mana, give them a 2/2, and then play like 2 other things in that turn, I mean, it's pretty hard for you not to be winning at least one, if not both expeditions.
Yeah, I think this is the best version of this card. It's really, really good. Like you said, the hand cost 5 or less, that's not going to really come up. In Constructed, most decks don't even play characters that high mana cost.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, this is probably like a 7, to be honest.
Wow, huge jump.
It's competing with Off You Go. And you can't return this to hand like you can with Off You Go with a lot of effects that Lyra or Yzmir wants to do already. But straight up discarding a character is really powerful.
I think I would. I think I might be right there with you with 7. 2 mana to just discard a character, like I'm already happy with my sack disposal, whatever the card is. Why can't I remember it? And that does that for 4 mana. Mm-hmm. This does it for 2 and gives them a 2/2, which often you'll beat anyway. So like, I'm in. I'm just in. I want it.
Good.
We shift into Lyra, and it's exactly the rare. I feel no different about it. I would still give it a 7.
Yeah, I think this is good. Doesn't really change anything in my opinion, so I think it's still a 7.
Cool. Let's keep it rolling.
That's Metamorphosis, baby. On to Feast of Thoughts. Okay, so this is another one of those cards that I wanted to pick and play around with in Limited. And boy, was that a bad idea. So Feast of Thoughts was 3 from hand, 5 from reserve. This is a spell Conjuration Disruption. Might be the first spell I've noticed that has 2 subtypes. It says choose X+1, where X is my number of arcane counters. So you can do any one of these things on the face. You can draw a card. You can make a mana moth in target expedition. You can remove 3 counters from target card in play or in reserve, or you can sabotage. This has the passive support ability of Yzmir. When you play another spell, I gain an arcane counter up to a max of 3. So from reserve, you can do, at the ceiling, you can do all 4 of these things. Notably, you cannot do the same option more than once. That's the difference with rare. Spoiler alert, we'll get to that later. I picked this card in draft because I thought it would be good. I was playing a Faunus, and on the face, for 3 mana, you could make a Mana Moth, and a Faunus can then put a boost on the Mana Moth. So you're spending 3 mana on a 3/3/3 just fine. This goes to reserve, starts building counters up. On paper, this looks good. I was excited to play with this card. Yeah, I waited too long. A lot of the times, like the remove 3 counters from target card in play or in reserve, that never mattered. Or if I was sabotaging, that would usually be the same thing I'm targeting with remove 3 counters from either in play or in reserve. This card was weird. Never really did anything for me. I got baited again in Yzmir.
Yeah.
What do you think of this card?
I played this version of this card and I misunderstood it. And I thought you could choose the same option more than once at common, and you can't. And I got blown out really badly by casting this and then realizing, oh, I can't sabotage twice and draw 2 cards or make 8 Mana Moths or whatever. I had managed to get it up there to the maximum arcane counters, and actually I think I had augmented it. And I was I bet my opponent was real confused when I augmented it because it don't do nothing.
Yeah, augmenting this card, that's not good.
Yeah, no. So don't be like me. Don't, try to read this card when you get it. So 3 mana to do any of this stuff is below rate, I would say. 3 mana to get a card, 3 mana to sabotage, 3 mana for a 2/2/2. All of that feels like below what I'd expect to pay. And removing counters, I don't really have even a barometer for that, but it is by far the least valuable mode. 5 mana, I would want to be choosing at least 2 modes, if not 3. I'd really prefer to be choosing 3 modes. I think 4 modes doesn't super matter because you're almost never choosing the third option. This card's just kind of bad. I don't think it's very good. I would hesitate to ever play it again. I think it's like a 2.
I think this card is an all-star in a Faunus limited deck where you have a bunch of good spells. This is going to be like your best spell in that deck. But
really?
Again, you have to have a bunch of good spells. Because if you're playing this from reserve for 5 mana and it has 2 counters like you're saying, you're going to get to make a 3/3/3 because a Faunus can put a boost on it. You can sabotage and draw a card for 5 mana. So you're paying 5 mana for a 3/3/3 that draws a card and sabotages.
Yeah, I guess in a Faunus specifically, the fact that from hand you will 90% of the time choose mode 2 so that you get a 3 mana 3/3/3, and then 5 mana, you get a much better version of that 3/3/3 ideally. I would, okay, I'd be some amount in for that, but all right, that does bump it up for me. It's a sort of card where I think it's like a 4 in a Faunus and a 2 outside of a Faunus. Does that make sense?
Yep, 100%. Yeah. I don't think you should play this in any other deck that's not a Faunus, just because the from face is so much worse if you're not playing it a Faunus.
What do you give it?
So I think I'm going to give it a 5, just because I think it's just fine in limited to Faunus. And it might see play, maybe not the common. It might see play in constructed just because it's versatile. Again, this would be a sideboard banger if there were sideboards. But okay, that's the common. Moving on to the rare. So this is 3 from hand, 6 from reserve rather than 5 from reserve. Notably, with this version, all the modes are still the same, but you can now pick the same option multiple times. And the passive support ability, where you gain arcane counters, the new maximum is up to 6 from 3. That is huge.
Yep.
Now, this is a version of the card that you do want to augment.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
If
only because you're unlikely to get to 6 without a little help.
Yeah, for sure. But if you do manage to get to 6, you can, augment it even further beyond and keep popping off. This is the best version of this card. Maybe, besides the faction shifted, which we haven't gotten to yet. But if I were to see this after, deciding I'm going to play Yzmir in limited, I would be very happy and excited to play a Faunus, just because this card can be a house. If you're, playing it from reserve with 1 or 2 counters on it, you can make a bunch of Mana Moths. That's really powerful. I think this card is solid. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is the version I pictured in my mind when I read the common, and so it's so clearly better. You generate enough mana moths to win at least one expedition, if not both. Balance things out potentially. Ideally, drain their reserve, and then if you still have some choices left over, you either further win your expeditions or you just draw cards. And drawing cards is also real good in Aphanis in general. Yeah, so this is definitely the best version. I still think its best home, especially for limited, is in an Aphanis deck. I think outside of it, it's still like not great. Like, in order to get the arcane counters on, you kind of need to be building pretty directly into Yzmir or playing, spells from other factions that do generate dudes, like your conscriptions. It's better. I don't know how much. I want to give it like a 6.
Yeah, I was also going to give it a 6.
Okay.
I don't know if it's going to see constructed play just because it's kind of expensive on the back half. Maybe if there's like enough cost reducing things, that would be good. Like you have Studious Disciple that you can use the support ability to reduce the cost of this. Like maybe those kind of effects can make this card see play in constructed. But yeah, I think I'm going to land on a 6 for this version. And now it is faction shifted over to Ordis. This is just the common version. So all of the modes are still the same. Mana cost is 3 from hand, 5 from reserve. And it has the passive support ability of Ordis. When a character joins your expeditions, it gains the arcane counter.
So you're far more likely to max out your arcane counters with this guy.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it makes tokens, which Ordis wants to do. Draws cards, it sabotages. I think this is just fine. I don't actually know if it's better than the common in Yzmir. Because, like, I don't know. It is very flexible.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of this version?
Yeah, so I think the from hand is worse on Feast of Thoughts in Ordis, unless you're in limited also playing Aphanis, that it's just like, another copy that's easier to trigger. In that circumstance, which is kind of what I rated the common against, is like in Aphanis is a 4 and everywhere else it's terrible. In Aphanis, sorry, I just smacked my mic. In Aphanis, in limited, and you're playing with Yzmir and Ordis and something else. This is better than the common just because it is so much easier to get it up to 5 mana with X equaling 4, and being able to do the full card, or at the very least X equaling 3 if you can, snap it off. I do think this card, I should have mentioned this with the common. I think this tends to sit in your reserve for a really long time, and then on a turn where you don't really have something much better to do, you play the common version or the faction shifted rare version, just because like you have to do all of it. So you do as much of it as you can. I think it's like a 5.
I also think it's a 5. You could see this card in constructed just because it's so versatile. Like Sigismar is a really good deck. It has some flex spots, and like in Aphanis, you're playing this on the face and making a mana moth that's a 3/3/3, and Sigismar, you can kind of compare it because you can put the mana moth in the same expedition that has the 1/1/1,
Sure.
and it's a 3/3/3 in that way.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think this card is just fine, so I'm going to give it a 5.
Okay.
That's Feast of Thoughts.
Thank you for taking the really wordy card. I'll take less words. Next up, we have Nalam Spires. 2 from hand, 2 from reserve for a landmark permanent construction. It has, when you play a spell, I gain an arcane counter. Then you may exhaust me and spend 4 of my arcane counters to create a mana moth 2/2 illusion token in target expedition. Here's the trick with this card. It does not have 2 abilities. It has 1 ability, and it triggers when you play a spell. So when you play that 4th spell, you want to probably exhaust it right then, because who knows if you're getting the 5th one. And for your investment of 2 mana and 4 spells, you get a 2/2 for free. I don't want this card.
Yeah, I had this multiple times in my pre-release kits, and I think I even had like 1 or 2 of these in the last draft that we played, and I just like never saw myself wanting to play this card just because it's a permanent in your Spells Matters deck, and it's like I would just rather play another spell in my Spells Matter deck.
It is a win more card for Spells Matter in a way that doesn't further the Spells Matter game plan and is so expensive. I think most games you will never get a Mana Moth out of this, that you resolve it. And then in the games that you do get a Mana Moth, you will get 1. The idea of getting more than 1 out of this thing is a pipe dream. In limited, in particular.
It seems like what you want to do with this card is have some kind of repeatable like augment. So you can just augment it over and over and kind of turn it into a Mana Moth generator.
Sure.
I'm thinking like Sap Extractor, I think, is the 1 mana permanent that says at noon you can augment.
Yeah.
So if you put an arcane counter on this thing and then you just augment it every turn and make sure you never go to 0 because you're probably never triggering the arcane counter again.
You still got to cast a spell to get that Mana Moth, though.
Oh, that's true.
If you augment it up to 4, you don't just get to activate it. You have to wait till you cast a spell. This is what I was saying. It is one ability.
This card's not good.
It's just bad, man. I'm not playing this thing. It's a 1. I'm not ever playing this card.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give it a 1 as well.
And again, my standard is how excited am I when my opponent plays it? And I'm like, they spent 2 mana to do this? Yeah. Now let's see if the rare is any different. It's more expensive, up to 3 from hand and 3 from reserve. And it says, as usual, when you play a spell, I gain 1 arcane counter. Then you may exhaust me and spend 3 of my arcane counters to create a Mana Moth. So net, it's more expensive with a lower arcane counter like trigger threshold. I'm still out. Like, I don't care that I think, okay, in the games where you resolve this, I think you're now more likely to get 1 Mana Moth out of it. I am not happy to spend 3 mana to get a 2/2/2, much less at 3 mana to get a 2/2/2 2, 3, 4, 5 turns later when it doesn't matter. Like, I'm out. I'm a 1.
Yeah, I could see this seeing play in like Constructed where you're looping your magical trainings or something. I don't know. It's weird that you have to exhaust it. It seems like because of how much you have to invest to actually get the Mana Moth, it seems like as soon as you spend that spend 3 arcane counters, you just make it so that it would be possible to make more than 1 in a turn or whatever.
No, they had to put some restraints on this incredibly powerful card.
Yeah. I don't know. This is so weird.
It's cheeks.
I'll give it a 2. I'm going to give it a 2 just because it is possible to get more than 1 Mana Moth in a game with this card, at least. Because if you get 2 Mana Moths, at least I think you'd kind of be happy with that. You get
someone record the replay of them producing more than 1 Mana Moth with either of the Yzmir versions of this card. And I'll be thrilled. All right, we faction shift into Axiom. Again, 3 from hand, 3 from reserve, but as usual with Axiom faction shifts, we have some words changing here. So it says, when another permanent joins your expeditions or landmarks, so either your gear or your constructions, whatever, I gain 1 arcane counter. Then you may exhaust me and spend 3 of my arcane counters to create a brass bug 2/2. So same net effect in terms of like what body is getting added to the board, but we now care about permanence because Axiom cares about permanence. I still think this is bad. This is already a permanent.
Yeah.
You only have 2 landmark slots. So you're going to be rotating some amount of stuff in and out of your other landmark slot, and or you're playing a bunch of gear, all to get a 2/2/2 for 3 mana. Again, the math ain't mathin' on this card. I'm not playing it.
I think this is the best version of this card. It synergizes super well with Sierra. Notably, Sierra is not in the limited format, but she is, of course, in Constructed. When you play this, you immediately get a 2/2/2, which is already a big thumbs up.
Sure.
We're fans of that. And then from then on, your next few turns, you're going to keep playing 3 mana permanents to trigger your Sierra. You're going to add counters to this, and then it will poop out a Brass Bug at some point while you're just doing your normal game plan of Sierra, which is playing permanents or landmarks.
Man,
this is the best version of this card.
I can think of another permanent that triggers Sierra and poops out Brass Bugs, and it does it every turn.
Yeah, you're thinking of the Nalam card or whatever. Is that the one you're?
I mean,
that one does mana moths.
There's Brass Bug Hive. I mean, Brass Bug Hub. I know, one of those cards. You know, and it's like, yeah, more mana, but like, I don't know. You're gonna get more Brass Bugs out of it because you'll get more than one.
Yeah, I guess. I think you could get more than one with this in Axiom. I think it's possible that you'll be playing enough permanents or gears, I should say, to be triggering this.
You're probably playing that 2 mana Sabotage landmark or whatever it is. Construction.
Maybe. I was thinking that you'd be playing I think that's called the Armor Jammer or something like that. Armor Jammer. The problem with that card is in the deck that you're playing this, which is Sierra, Armor Jammer is 2 mana, which does not trigger Sierra.
That's true.
So maybe you're not playing that in this deck. You're probably playing like Bug Out Bag. You're playing this card. You're playing Brass Bug Hive, Kelonic Heater. It's like a 3 mana permanent that triggers Sierra. I don't know. I think this card might see play, so I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt and give it a 5.
5?
Yeah. It's the best version of this card.
I think you're playing all that stuff and I'm playing characters and they win the game.
That's true.
I think this is total nonsense and terrible across the board. It is a 1 at every rarity. I'm never, ever playing this card. Prove me wrong.
Wow. Yeah, beat him with it.
Beat me with it. You won't.
All right. Nalam Spires. On to the last card. It is the Scholar's Vault. So 2 from hand, 2 from reserve. Landmark permanent. Sight. This says, when you play me from anywhere, resupply. Big fan.
Yep.
If there's 1 or more spells in your reserve limit is increased by 1. Also, big fan. Yeah, this card is solid. Thumbs up. 2 from hand, 2 from reserve. Love that cost. You get a resupply on both sides. Mm-hmm. If for whatever reason you are putting this in your reserve, maybe you're playing Subash or Fen or whatever in limited, this flips over. This card's good. It's really, really nice to have an increased reserve limit, even if it's not, restricted to spells. Think of Tech Lab units, another permanent that is in this set. Yeah, this card's just good, I think. I played this in my Faunus deck, and I was very happy to see it every time. So I'm going to give this like a 7.
A 7? Wow.
Yeah, because in the deck where you want to resupply, like this is card advantage. It's increasing your reserve limit.
It's not card advantage.
Only 2 mana.
It's not card advantage.
Well,
you're spending 2 mana and a card to get half of a card.
Yeah, I suppose so. It's just
we got to stop saying draw a card is card advantage. It is generally not. If it affected the board, I would agree with you, but it doesn't affect the board. It marginally affects your reserve.
Yeah, I mean, I just like seeing more cards. So more cards is more good. That's where I'm at.
This guy wants to turn his deck upside down.
That's what I'm saying.
I think this is either a 4 or a 5. I'm going to be generous and call it a 5. I think you will often end up playing this just to get a little bit more room to breathe in your reserve and potentially resupply into something that matters. But it is not like shattering the earth. You're certainly not advancing your expeditions with this card, obviously. And so that is a little bit of a setback. But like, it's pretty low cost. It's not hard to squeeze this in. I wouldn't play it on turn 1.
Yeah, this is a wheel spinny card. I like to spin my wheels.
You
my
do like
favorite
to
deck
spin
play
your
is
wheels.
Lendaway. So yeah, I mean, it's perfect for me.
Every round going
The
to
rare-
time.
Yeah, that's true. In response, I'll play a Moonlight Jellyfish. That's what I like to
Huge.
do. Anyway, so the rare is Scholar's Vault. It's still the same name, turns out. It's 2 from hand, 2 from reserve still. it actually loses one of my favorite parts about this card, which is the resupply. It says now you may play spells of hand cost 7 or more for 1 less. This sucks.
How many spells are in the game that cost that much?
Not many. Maybe 5.
I'm going to find out. You keep talking.
Yeah. So I'm just going to skip ahead real quick to the faction shifted, just because I have some interesting points here. The faction shifted is into Bravos. Okay. It still doesn't have resupply, which is, what I think was one of the better things on this card. It now says you may play characters of hand cost 7 or more for 1 less. Notably, in Bravos, that reduces the cost of scout. So you can scout something for less. There are no scout spells. Okay, so the rare version of this card does not actually give you a lot of benefit like the Bravos version does, where going from scout 2 to scout 1, that is massive. Going from 7 mana to 6 mana, negligible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. This card is a stinker. I'm going to give it a 2 with the rare version of Yzmir.
Cool. There are 7 cards in all of Altered that cost 7 or more, which you can translate to 21 if you look at all of their rarities and faction shifts and all that sort of stuff. The notable options in there are Winter Nova, Flutter of Moths, Celebration Day, Celestial Blast kind of. Oh, wait, no, this is including, oh my God, it's including the Kickstarter versions. It's even less.
Oh.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think there are 5 different cards. Times 3 is 15. I'm not playing this card. A lot of the value came from the resupply. For me, I think the rare is like a 2. I don't know how much I just care about this passive ability. This increasing your reserve limit by 1 if there's a spell. Maybe it's a 3 because you want to get those arcane counters on spells in this set. I'll give it a 3. What'd you give it for rare?
I thought I gave it a 2, but I think I will bump it up to a 3 as well, because that passive increasing your reserve limit is just really nice. It's a nice to have quality of life improvement in limited.
Yeah. And the faction shift?
Yeah, the faction shifted, I touched on it already. You can reduce the cost of scout, which is good, but at the same time, it's not that important. It is better than the Yzmir rare. But let me just give this a quick read. You may play characters of hand cost 7 or more for 1 less. If there's 1 or more characters of hand cost 7 or more in your reserve limit is increased by 1. I'm a little bit confused as to why this cares about characters of hand cost 7 or more, because again, there are not many of those
right
in Altered. There are maybe
there are more of them than
5?
there are spells. No, there's more than that. Hang on, we can do the research here.
Yeah, I'm thinking with Bravo specifically, if I'm thinking about this in Constructed, there's not that many. There's the Hunger, there's Theseus, there's Kaibara, there's that's all I can think of.
There are 19. Probably some amount of getting screwed by there being Kickstarter and that being tracked separately. But yeah, you mentioned a few of them. There's also Eros, Demeter, the Snow Queen, Man in the Maze, which we have talked about.
Yeah, but none of those are in Bravos for Constructed. Demeter might be. But yeah.
I don't know, man.
Yeah, this card is not great. I do like that it reduces Scout, but is it enough to give it a slot in your deck? A rare slot at that? I don't know. This card also doesn't seem good. I'll give it a 3.
When we're talking about Bravos, yeah, you mentioned Kaibara, Sakurabu.
Oh, Sakurabu, of course.
I think that's probably the one that actually gets the most play out of all of these.
Mm-hmm.
And then Theseus, Eros, the Hunger, Theseus again. I'm going to say Theseus about 3 more times. I don't like this card very much. I think reducing Scout is relevant some amount of the time. But it's one of those things where it's a marginal benefit if you've already picked up those type of cards that you want to play. And outside of that, you're not going to do it that much. So I think I'd give it a 3.
All right. I also gave it a 3. And that wraps up Yzmir. So we are going to have a recap video soon. Keep your eyes peeled. We're going to go over, like I said, some of our biggest winners and biggest losers. And we'll have some other statistics in there that'll be for fun. I'm also going to share out the sheet that we've been using for tracking with some modular formula stuff so you can look and see what we said about everything and, you know, fill it out however you'd like to get the info that you're interested in. Say thanks to Ryan. He's been a trooper listening to me for hours and hours and hours. You will see him one more time in this recap video, but thank you so much for watching.
And then never again.
In the next one.
I'm actually dying tomorrow, so
rest in peace.